What's up, everybody? Kenny here, also known as Silent85. Welcome to a vlog. I just trimmed my beard. It's a little off. Um, I've been watching this movie called Freud's Last Session. It's a discussion between him and C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is, religious. He's a man of faith. I'm also, just a personal note, I've been trying to change some of my, or critique some of my views as of recently. In recent years, I've been through this personal struggle, and this is something I've addressed here on the channel from time to time. Excuse me. A religious person was responsible for the darkest point in my life. Or as Homer would say, the darkest point so far. But, for a long time, I held a very, very negative, some would even argue hateful bias toward religious people, especially religious fanaticism. People that disregarded society or reality in general in order to place their own beliefs above everything, which is dangerous. And sadly, that's what happened to me. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me because of this abuser. Rather, it was they thought they were doing God's work. I don't know. I'll honestly never understand her mentality. Or if she did evil actions and then she knew she could wash it away by praying for forgiveness. Straight up abusing her faith beliefs. And I would argue that's not uncommon. Maybe not as extreme, but not uncommon for human beings to do. What I want to lead up to here is that just for the best example I know and that I grew up around with is the Bible. I hold the Bible as a book, an ancient book of literature and teachings written by man. Obviously, it's supposed to be inspired by God himself or visions, prophecy, so on and so forth, Psalms. But nonetheless, it was a book written by man that has been edited. There's been lost books, there's been omitted books, edited information, so on and so forth, constantly translated throughout history. So some meanings and stories or some details and stories have been modified or changed to better adapt to an ever-evolving society. The main problem I've always had with that is that if these teachings are to be true and a foundation for somebody to live a life of faith, if that foundation is ever changing with society, then how exactly are you supposed to stay strong in it? So anyway, that's my view. I mean, I get it. It's a foundation for a new generation. It has to be updated every so often to keep up. Certain rules have to change. Certain lessons have to change, such as eating meat on a certain day or stoning people for something they did or didn't do, so on and so forth. There's vile, but there's also good teachings in it. The reason I mention this is because if you have been a nerd like me growing up, and depending on your level of nerdery, you have probably escaped once or twice inside Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons, video games, especially RPGs, which are, for lack of a better way to put it, interactive novels with obviously better graphics and whatnot than a choose-your-own-adventure story. But now that's really more so, I would say, applies to today's RPGs, especially Baldur's Gate. Because you have the classic RPG that doesn't follow in the Dungeons and Dragons style. You're facing against enemies and you're making progress in a story. If you don't defeat the certain enemy, you'll never make progress in the story, right? But anyway, in similarity, and I'm not saying that gaming is a religion. I'm not saying that Dungeons and Dragons is a religion, because I'm also not qualifying, in my view, the Bible. That is the foundation of a religion, obviously worldwide, but there are other ancient teachings that are the same thing, and I regard them the same way. But they're all man-written, aren't they? They're all man-written. For the longest time in my life, I escaped via video games. They're all designed of human intelligence and creativity, um, to share stories, to share experiences, to share lessons. And I found the same thing in gaming that I think a lot of people find in the Bible. Um, of course, you get into the whole faith factor, and it's taken to a bit of, in my opinion, kind of an extreme, because people again base their life off of it, and they go by it when really all it is being a good human being, taken to a religious standpoint of, you got to have some unseen parental figure watching over you to make sure you do good, in that regard. But religion is changing, and from what I've seen, and people are really kind of getting away from organized religion and what it can entail, and they're really making more of a personal, belief and whatnot. But anyway, what I'm getting to here is that humanity has a history of becoming obsessive or falling in love with or basing their life off of human writing. We are, in some ways, in love with ourselves. Maybe even so dangerously, even so that it would cause us to not want to look at reality or to even acknowledge reality. So, there's that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's no historical significance for the Bible. There are examples of people that did exist. For example, when it comes to the character of Jesus, I believe Jesus exists. I don't really think he was a son of God or something to that, even if that was what he preached or claimed to have been. I do think there are figures that happen throughout history, and people take them to a significant level to where they believe them fervently and have faith in them, and they can do no wrong, kind of thing. Obviously, Jesus' story there's some contradictions in that statement, because he wasn't perfect. The Jesus character wasn't perfect, but he was a martyr for who he was. He was a martyr for that faith, for that teaching. And history has shown that characters much like Jesus, people have clung to and found hope in. And unfortunately, the opposite of Jesus, people have found some dangerous faith and dangerous belief in their thoughts that have led to very dangerous and evil things. So it's a common, well, I would say fairly uncommon, borderline common practice in humanity to do so. In books, in people, in gaming, in music, in, whatever may be a product of human creativity and intelligence and design, so on and so forth. And the thing is that I don't think a lot of these books were meant to be that way. I don't think they started out like that. Some of them probably did, but if you look at a lot of modern day books, yes, there is experiences in teaching in them, but they're just products of the authors or writers wanting to either spread a message or spread a good fantasy story, or help people with self-help books, so on and so forth. But what's really amazing is that there's a comment by Freud, and I don't know if it's a direct quote or not, but Freud was raised, from what I can tell, with a Jewish father, and the nanny was Catholic. There was the father threw out the nanny for praying, and the nanny yells at Sigmund, "Pray for your father so he'll get in heaven." His father then counters with, "There is no heaven, don't ever pray for me," kind of thing. So it's amazing that people can hold so many different views, and they can cause people to react in certain ways, and even certain views of getting into heaven, when the Jewish people don't actually believe in a heaven. If the Christian views hold true, where does that leave the Jewish people in the Christian view, and so on and so forth. It's just all of these things throughout humanity's history it's gone from my personal evolution from this very biased thing, very grudgeful thing, and I've evolved into more of a I've evolved and developed back into a very curious person about the whole thing, and I do have my times to where I catch myself and I'm saying, oh, hey, that's evidence, that's evidence to me being right, so on and so forth, because I'm human. But overall, I love to analyze situations like this, and I've always been very curious about how these things have developed throughout humanity. It's always amazed me, and it always will. It always will. And will we ever have a profound answer? I don't know, because human ingenuity, human creativity, human whatever it may be, we may always be at odds with belief systems like that, or ideologies, or I really think the one thing we can really all agree on, I would hope, is that when it comes to scientific method, science can be proven right here in front of us. We can give examples. We can do we can do experiments over and over, and there's evidence. There's physical evidence for it. Obviously, there are deeper sciences where there's not immediate evidence to the naked eye, but with certain instruments, with certain circumstances, it can be viewed. And obviously, science is always evolving. There's always going to be gaps that we will, progressively try to fill in. But that's because it's a human-based system, and humans have only been around so long. Higher thought has always been around so long for us to be able to develop these ways and these measures to better analyze our universe. Now, when it comes to me, where do I land on it? Because I was raised Christian. I was raised, and unfortunately, some of the darker periods, because Christianity was forced on me by a certain individual. I have evolved to a state of an agnostic atheist. I say that because I believe we're a part of something greater, which levels out to me to humanity, to being a part of this earth, and then to being a part of this universe. There's an energy we're all connected to, rather it's, an energetic flow of the universe, the planet. It's kind of vague in that regard, but we're all a part of something greater. And I think to have, for the individual like myself, it's up to us to recognize that and really kind of work towards something that can benefit everybody. That's based in reality. That's based in, where we are and how we can make things better, or look back at how we made things worse and learn from it, But unfortunately, humanity does have a pretty bad track record of doing that. So, but that's where I lie in the scheme of things. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in, angels or demons or anything to that regard. I believe those things, if it is true, was taken sort of out of context, and it was our ancient ancestors trying to better understand what was happening, whatever it may have been, whatever event or dream or daydream was had, or whatever. In some situations, there's even been examples of certain drugs being intaken, because back then they didn't fully understand the full what it could cause, alcoholism, so on and so forth, or even human hubris and ego, or just straight up villainous tendencies, people coming up with excuses to wipe out another people because they don't fit a certain criteria. So, you enact some religious faith or religious belief to do so, and you feel justified in your own doing. And it's, it's crazy. But anyway, what really kind of spurned this on, and what really has kind of helped me a bit, again, it's a movie, what I think was a bit of a loose biopic of Sigmund Freud and this discussion with C.S. Lewis, because you've got two men on opposite sides kind of talking with each other. And Freud tends to take a bit of an air of, like, I'm better than thou kind of thing every so often. And C.S. Lewis tends to be a bit more humble in that. But when you look at them both, they both tend to take a bit of a raw nerve when it comes to their way of thinking being questioned or brought into question. And it's a great examination of how two men can see things in one way, whether it's based on teachings from a book or science teaching of a book, you know. But I think the biggest difference there is you obviously operate on faith. There's always been this argument of like faith is the evidence of things unseen. It never really made sense to me, because look at the wind, you know. I mean, there's people back in the day that used to say, you know, I can feel the wind, but I can't see the wind. So, you know, how do I know that God's not the same thing? The problem with that is that our naked eye can't view the wind, you know. And there's a lot of instruments that can't either, just because it's pressure coming down, and, you know, there's a scientific explanation for it. And it's throughout the years been regarded as, you know, true, because it is true. So there's always these different back and forths between religion and science, but thankfully there's also parts in society where they mingle, you know, they mix. And I never really understood how a religious person could be a scientist, or a scientist could be a religious person. You always kind of think about it night and day, at least I did. And you think, how does that, you know, how does that work out, like mentally for that person? And I've never really had the chance to sit down with anybody and really talk about that, like somebody in that position. There's obviously interviews on YouTube, there's videos on YouTube, but that's just always been a thought. And I've never really been able to sit down and view those. I need to at some point. But anyway, I'm rambling here, but I wanted to put this up and talk about it. 16-minute video. I didn't mean to go this long, but this is stuff I've talked on in certain videos in the past, and I think with this video, some of those ideas that I presented in the other videos have evolved. I've kind of become a bit of a different person than back then. So yeah, there's that. And these ideas, these examinations, these personal enlightenments and views, and are always turning into something that I think is more of a foundation for me, for my later in life. And we'll always be who we are, and we should never allow any outside sources to manipulate us in such a dark way that something is forced on us. You know, be who you are, believe what you need to believe, what you want to believe, whatever is your strength, but never let it exit you from reality. Never let it exit you, or set a dark reality or future for anybody else, because we're all human. We're all in this together, whether we're looking forward to a heaven, or rather we're, you know, looking to rejoin the planet, or rather, you know, there's nothing beyond death, you know. Whatever it is, we're still human, and we're in this currently with each other. And sadly, a lot of this leads to some pretty fucked up things to happen in our society. Wars, holy wars, you know, struggling, famine, starving people, abusing people, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, all of these things get the best of humanity, and we're tricked, or we're manipulated into believing that they are just when they're not. So hopefully, at some point, in a lot of ways, humanity will grow up. We'll be able to shake off whatever is affecting us in a negative way, the most negative way, I should argue, and move forward, make progress, and not keep taking steps back when we should be moving forward. So anyway, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay sane. Remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise. And thanks for listening. These kind of videos are never really easy to talk about, but I think I did a pretty good job here, despite the rambling. See ya.